Hello and thank you for watching. This is part two of the videos that I started to make titled If Muhammad was a false prophet, then please answer these questions. In the first part, we discussed the following questions. Um, why would Prophet Muhammad produce such a masterpiece as the Quran and a literary miracle like the Quran and then disclaim ownership or authorship of the Quran? This would be very unusual if he was a liar or a false prophet, because people are inclined to claim authorship and ownership of anything that is marvelous or spectacular or distinguished. Uh, Prophet Muhammad, on the contrary, he disclaimed any kind of authorship or any part in writing the Quran. Some people may claim that he did this so as to obtain more reverence and allegiance from the people. However, Prophet Muhammad had clarified to the people that everything that comes out from his mouth is from God, whether that be the Quran or the actual sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, which we call the Sunnah or the tradition. Sunnah are the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, and the Quran are the actual words of God. So he already claimed that he was a prophet from God and that everything that comes out of his mouth was from God. And then people were quite amazed about the superiority of the Quran, but he made it clear to them that these are not his words. So this would be very unusual and very odd and strange if he was not a true prophet. Also, Prophet Muhammad never uttered a single lie and was never caught lying. Throughout the 40 years that he lived amongst his people prior to receiving the message, it would be very unusual and odd and strange. It would not make sense that he would suddenly adopt a life of deception and to utter millions of lies and attribute them to God, when he was the one who never actually lied to a single human being, whether an adult or a child. So people who claim that he is not a true prophet, please answer that question and explain this phenomenon for us. Number three, Prophet Muhammad, if he was not a true prophet, if he was a liar, then liars usually make up lies to gain some kind of material gain in this world, such as luxury in life or wealth or popularity. Prophet Muhammad, when he claimed that he was a prophet, it only brought him so much grief and animosity and antagonism from his people and from all of Arabia. Everybody was against him because of that claim. And he did not give up that claim because of what happened. He insisted that he was a true prophet from God. And he risked his life and the life of his followers and life of his family. He endured isolation, persecution, abuse, and he persevered and he never changed his words. This is a very unusual behavior for somebody who is not truthful. These 3 points were discussed in the previous video. Also, we discussed in the previous video that Prophet Muhammad was the first and foremost to follow the teachings that he was delivering to the people. Again, liars and imposters do not have this kind of quality. He would be the foremost and ahead of everybody in his dedication to the commandments that he's teaching the people. He prayed throughout most of the night. He fasted many days, at least 50% to 60% of his days he spent fasting. As I mentioned, he endured so many hardships for the sake of delivering his message. He was ridiculed and he still persevered and was patient. He would give charity without count. this would be very unusual if he was a false prophet or an impostor. So please explain to us how come he was so dedicated to the teachings that he was delivering to the people. He was the number one in applying these teachings and following them. The other point we made in the last video was the fact that Prophet Muhammad was offered so many dazzling offers to give up his mission and to denounce his claim as being a prophet of God. And that included an offer to be the leader of his tribe, an offer to marry whomever he wants and whatever number of ladies he would want to choose, offer to obtain as much wealth as he may wish. But he rejected all these offers and told the people who came to offer him, the elders of his tribe, that if they were to bring down the sun and put it in my right hand and the moon in my left hand, I would not give up a single word of this message, even if I were to be killed during delivering this message. Again, this is totally unusual and unexpected from somebody who would be lying or untruth, or somebody who is untruthful. In the same book that Prophet Muhammad delivered, which is the Quran, false prophets are cursed. False prophets are cursed not only in the Quran, but in all God's revelations. Even in the Bible, it is mentioned that the false prophets are doomed and that they would perish. And we have seen many false prophets in the past perish, and even in our present days as well, and end up with a horrible fate. But Prophet Muhammad had the exact opposite. He was victorious. He gained the support of his Lord. He gained the love of his followers, and even people who were his enemies, they turned to be followers at the very end, and they became the most staunch of supporters. They loved him. They loved the message. They sacrificed their lives for the sake of that message. So how come everything turned around to his favor when at the beginning all the odds were against him? There was no hope. If anybody looked at how he started his message, he was alone in Arabia in a very hostile environment, having no supporters, being rejected by everybody. And during that time of rejection and isolation, promises were coming in the Quran, and these promises are still in the Quran, promising him that he will have a huge following, that all these enemies will turn out to be, they will end up as being followers and supporters of his message, and that God will protect him from all his enemies. And all this came to pass. So nobody can make such claims and promises for himself, and they all turn out, and they all turn out to be truthful at the very end. This is again a sign that he was supported by a higher power that was taking care of him and supporting him, protecting him, guiding him. So please explain to us all these phenomena and things that happened during his life. The above mentioned points, the previously mentioned points in the beginning of this video, were discussed in the previous video. I had to summarize them. I will mention a couple of more points in this video that I did not mention in the previous one. Also, if Prophet Muhammad was not a truthful prophet, and if all his aim was to gain popularity or leadership or dominance, then he could have had a much easier way of reaching that goal. He could have brought a message of Arabic national identity and tried to unite the Arabs against their enemies at the time, the Persian Empire and the Roman Empire, who had an imperialistic attitude towards the Arabs. And prior to his coming, there had been wars between the Bedouins of Arabia and those empires where thousands and possibly hundreds of thousands of Arabs were killed. He could have reminded the Arabs of all these atrocities that were committed against them and tried to unite them as Arabs against these other nations. Because at the very end, he did, or his followers did up conquering these two nations. But he didn't take that approach. He took the approach of guiding the people. That was his main goal. Even Arabs themselves, he incurred their animosity and antagonism when he denounced idol worship. And that was their religion and the religion of their fathers and forefathers. They were very proud of it. But his message was to deliver those people from this falsehood to the truth of worshiping the one God. So he focused on this message. For the first 13 years in Mecca, during this long period of persecution and isolation and struggle, all he did was call the people to the one God, and he denounced idol worship. He ridiculed idol worship, and he exposed his own life to danger because of that. He did not seek to unite the Arabs against any enemy just to gain leadership or support. Also, he could have done the opposite. He could have gained the support and allegiance of people of the scriptures, the Jews especially, who lived in Medina. There were big Jewish tribes living in Medina, just north of Mecca. And he did migrate to Medina. So he could have done the opposite. He could have actually talked to the people of the scriptures, the Jews especially, and the Christians, that he is also a prophet from God. And the Jews, before his coming, were also foretelling the Arabs that there will be a prophet who will come, and we will be his followers, and we will conquer you, because there was also an animosity between the people of the scriptures and the Arabs at the time. And the Jews, as I mentioned, were threatening the Arabs that this prophet will come and we will follow him. But when he came, they did not follow him, because he also denounced many of the false beliefs that were introduced into their religion. He denounced worshiping other gods. He denounced Trinity. He denounced and he showed the falsehood that God had a son. So basically that also put him in a position where the people of the scriptures were also against him. So he put himself in a situation where the Arabs were against him, the Jews at the time were against him, the small number of Christians in Arabia were also against him. A false prophet would never put himself in this position, or a liar in general would not put himself at odds with everybody, and nobody would try to incur the animosity of everybody who's surrounding him. He will try to seek some kind of alliance to support his message. So please explain to us why was his only focus his message to deliver the people to the truth, to worshiping the one God, regardless of what the consequences would be from delivering this message. And again, God promised him that if you just continue to deliver my message and to call people to glorify me, and that I am the only God who has the right to be worshipped and the right to be obeyed, then I will be the one to take care of you and protect you from all your enemies. And this actually happened. He was protected, and by the end of his life, near the end of his life, almost all of Arabia had embraced Islam, and he had more than 114,000 followers at the time. And finally, the final point I'll mention in this talk is the fact that Prophet Muhammad had two totally distinct styles when he spoke. The style of the Quran and the style of his own sayings. And he made it clear that the Quran are not his words. Those are the words of his Lord, God. While his sayings had a totally different style, and nobody could mix the two together. If one hears the Quran, immediately he would know that this literary style is not the style that we see and hear from the Prophet Muhammad when he speaks. So please explain to us, how can a human being suddenly develop two different styles of speech that he never had before? This only happened to him after he claimed that he was a prophet. He said, the words came to me and I will recite you the exact words that came to me. Even when the angel would say to him, Qul, which means say, O Muhammad, he would actually recite that same word. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, say God is one. He wouldn't just say God is one. He would actually even utter the words that were spoken to him by the angel as they were spoken to him. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, say God is one. قُل means say. So he would not even remove a single letter from the revelation that was given to him in its exact wording, which is the Quran. The other kind of revelation given to him, which is the revelation in meaning, which are the meanings that are delivered to him, and he understands and then he expresses in his own words, are basically every other word that comes out of his mouth. And this is what's called the tradition of the Prophet Muhammad or his Sunnah. Both are from God, but both are totally different. How can one human being have these two different styles and suddenly acquire them when he never had them before? And this only happened to him after he claimed to be a prophet. So please explain to us how that could happen. Thank you for watching, and we will continue the series in other videos.